This is a temporary tent peg, but you can easily turn this into a permanent tent peg with a little bit more carving and the use of the fire. I'm just shaving the point of the blade to a more of a pencil shape, more bullet shaped end, which is more durable than the temporary peg. A bit neater. I'll remove some of the bark as well. Pegs like this are excellent. When they're dry, they're very light, they're strong, they do the job beautifully, and what's really nice is they're biodegradable, so should you forget one, and let's face it, people forget tent pegs the whole time, they just decay and go back to nature. I don't want the point though to be too fine, so I'm going to make that a little bit more blunt so that it's stronger for driving into the ground. Like that. I've put the tips of the pegs into the ashes where there's not much oxygen, but there's a lot of heat, and I just want to heat them until they're a lot drier and the wood is just on the edge of scorching, when it'll be a lot harder. It's almost like tempering metal. Certainly it hardens the wood, makes them more durable. It takes a lot of experience to judge exactly when they are hardened enough. When you first start out, you can heat them until the wood is just turning brown and consider that done. But here's one tip. As the moisture is driven from them, the sound will change. At this point of the stick, the lower end, they're still wet. At the other tip, they're drying. Should sound harder. Certainly they physically are feeling a lot tougher. Stinging nettles have been used for cordage just about wherever they grow. Certainly it's something our ancestors used, and they're full of very long fibres. With practice and a little bit of confidence, you can quite easily clean a stinging nettle without getting stung, just with your bare hands. It's the old saying of to grasp a nettle, I think, is to really be a little bit firm with it, and just clean them off like that. But if you have a lot of nettles to do, it's certainly well worth protecting your hands, and if you didn't have gloves with you, you can cover your hands in mud or clay, and that gives a very surprisingly good protection from the stings. That's how I do it barehanded, and I don't get stung at all by that process. But when you have a lot to do, it is a good idea to wear gloves, just because it speeds the whole process up. Fibres I'm after are on the outside of the nettle, and to get at those, the first thing to do is to flatten the nettle. These red nettles here I gathered from the open. They're quite different to the ones you saw me pick in the woods, which were lighter coloured green. These red nettles, like this one, are better for fibres. It gives stronger fibres. Sometimes you need something to bear down on. Just to once you flatten the nettle, what I do is I split it open and lay it flat. I'm splitting it. Like that. Now I bend it in the middle so that the pith, which is on the inside, breaks upwards and away from the fibres. Like that. And lay that over my index finger, place my thumb on top and then pull down. So now you can see the pith coming away from the fibres, and we go both ways. These are the fibres we're after. They're very strong, but they need to be dried before we can make those into cordage, although for many purposes they could be used just as they were. And this is the way that we use the fibres in the programme on Aboriginal Britain to attach the arrowhead. A fibre just as it is, like that, makes an extremely useful binding. Good and strong. Today perhaps somebody gardening, looking for something to tie up some onions or tie up a plant in the garden and not having some string to hand, could look in the nettle patch and use a skill from our past. You don't have to make string, you could just put a few fibres together like that, just twist them and use that as an impromptu tie. Completely biodegradable and will grow back. If I was going to make string from these, I would dry these fibres before I made the string, because they're going to shrink down an awful lot as they dry. In fact, when these are dry, it'll look just like a few hairs in my hand, because they really do shrink down thin. You need a lot of nettles to make cord. But anyway, just to show you how, we take a couple of fibres and we twist them together to make the fibre nice and round. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bend it in half, take the midpoint, and I'm going to roll on my thigh both of these strands in the same direction at the same time, like this. And at the end of the roll I clamp them against my thigh so they won't unravel, and then I let go on the left, and you see it start to twist up into cord. And what we do is we just encourage that, give it a little extra twist, like so, and then you move your fingers up to where the strands are parted, pinch it there, and repeat the process. And you can see how we're starting to get string. Now obviously eventually we're going to get to an end, because we always reach an end at some point, but in fact long before that, because these fibres taper, one of these strands will start to become thinner than its partner, and if we don't add in a new fibre at that point, the thin one will simply wrap around the thick one and we lose all the strength. So what we do is I look now for a strand of the right sort of thickness, and you can see here how they taper, and we lay that alongside the strand which is thinning the most and twist in the new fibre, and we carry on as before. And of course we could make as long a piece of cord as we need or we like, or that we have patience to make.